Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the From Busy to Rich podcast, where we help financial advisors grow their businesses beyond their products they sell and the assets they manage to increase profitability and reclaim their time by providing strategies and insights that would not only change your life, but practice. With me, as always, Wes Young. Wes, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Justin, fantastic.
It's good to see you. I know that we've got an exciting topic today, just in the nature of what's relevant to us. It's a busy season of the year. Depending on when you're listening to this right now, it's, there's tax season going on. There's a bunch of stuff in the market. So it's really pivotal for us internally that we've been talking a lot about really how are we managing the business life, the time balance and the calendar. And so I think this will be not just good for us from a dialogue standpoint, but probably pretty pivotal for a lot of our listeners today. So I'm excited to jump in. Why don't you kick off? Where are we going to start?
Yeah, so the premise behind this is rooted in this quote that I love. It says, it's not the shortage of time that should worry us, but rather our tendency to use time in low quality ways. Because all of us have the same amount of time, that's a given. But what we don't all do is use our time in the same quality ways. Oftentimes very low quality, and you can probably observe a portion of your life. If you're a high producer and things are going well, and you were to look back at yourself maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you were spending your time in lower quality ways, even though maybe that was a necessary component to getting where you are now from where you were. It certainly means that we should always be paying attention to this topic. And as we've taught, now thousands of advisors through Transform and of course the podcast, we do get a front row seat to coming into somebody's practice and getting to see where they're at right now, how they're currently operating, and all of them have a unlived life within them, as we talk about all the time, that they're super excited about. They want to move forward into the future, do things in a way that's really adds a ton of value to the people they serve, gives them a high quality of life, high profitability. But as the quote says, we have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. And between those two stands resistance. So I believe with all my heart, and this is why this conversation is so much fun to have, that the resistance oftentimes is really competition for our time and attention, And the more we can focus our attention, the better we're going to use our time. And so what I'd love to do, Justin, is just go through kind of the funnel, if you will, of where someone who really wants to refocus, really wants to use their time in high quality ways, no matter where they're at in their cycle of growth organizationally, where I would start if I was them, because it's been the place that we continually go back to every single quarter in order to really polish what we're doing and kind of reset the board to make sure that we're always using our time in the highest quality ways, and we're trending towards that becoming more and more efficient and more profitable.
Yeah, I'm excited. So that brings up if I'm one of our viewers or listeners chiming into this, where do you start? Because there's a lot to digest or unpack. It's got to start at somewhere and then branch out. So for you, if you were coming into this, maybe you've been in the business for a while, what's like the pivotal thing that you build from?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward for us. So what we do every 90 days, and where I would recommend everybody start that's listening, is I think you need to start out with, what is your 3-year vision for your life? Like, what does a rich life look like for you 3 years from today? If you had to think about all the big areas of life that you care about, so your professional life, your relationships that you have, the current financial situation that you find yourself in and what you want it to be, the physical health that you're in, and the spiritual aspect of your life. If you were to tell me your story 3 years from today, and you were to say, man, things are going well. This is like if I could tell this story 3 years from today, I would be excited about it. The team would be excited about it. What story are you telling? Because if you don't know what it is, you're naturally going to begin to do life by default instead of by design. When you design a future you want, say, this is ideal, this is a rich life, you're also the opposite happens. You'll begin to orchestrate around that idea, that vision. So all the things you could do, all the places you could spend time, the world begins to just filter or your lens begins to filter those things out. And it becomes really apparent the things you need to focus in on. So where I would start is by going through that exercise, and then I like to reverse engineer it. And I like to do this in all like the big picture first, like all areas of life. So you come up with your 3 year, and then you back that down, reverse engineer into a 1 year. Your 1 year is going to be a smaller version of your 3 year, because you can accomplish a whole lot more over 3 years, and you can dream a little bit. And as you're doing that, I would recommend you don't think about how you're going to do it. Not yet. You're going to get to that. But if you start thinking about how, and depending on how you're wired, some of you naturally go to like, yeah, but how would I do that? And then you shut it down and your vision gets small. Versus if you start out with, let's pretend I will have the answer to all those questions. What is, if I could make it look any way without putting any handcuffs or barriers on myself from doing it, what would it look like? And you've heard we talk about this all the time. When people are stuck in life or upset about the way things are going or frustrated, a great question to get you out of that is to say, well, if it was going great, what would it look like? Because a lot of people don't have an answer to that question. It's amazing to me that I think one of the greatest questions that Jesus ever asked to a guy was, "Hey, what do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you?" And if he asked you that question, would you have a good answer? Would you be like, "Well, I don't know. I just let me tell you all the things I don't like." And so instead of just focusing on what you don't want and the things that are not going well and the feelings that you're having, which is usually what we do, we kind of sit in the rocking chair of negativity and feelings and pessimism. Say, yeah, but if I could, so quit worrying about how and say, what do I want it to look like 3 years from today? And then back it down into a 1 year version, then back it down into a 90-day version. You are going to experience an amazing clarification of, hey, I think this is what I want. It's okay to be wrong, but it's not okay to not have one, because otherwise you're just going to continue to repeat that default approach to life where everything's fine. I'll do this. I'll do this. Time doesn't matter as much. I'll be really busy. I'll do a lot of stuff. But is it stuff that's really moving you in the direction that you want most? So specifically, what we offer is a tool, and we'll make this available to everybody that's listening. We'll attach it to this episode. It's called the Peak Performance Path. So after you do that big picture vision, what I would recommend you do is then just focus on the business section. Now, you should do this for all areas of your life, but this is a podcast for financial advisors trying to grow a great financial planning practice. So we're going to focus today in on the business side of this. And so in your peak performance path, the first thing that's going to be on there is your 3 year vision, but this one's really specific. So first it's going to have like, what is the like overarching win of your vision? And for us, it's when people engage in our annual planning process, it increases their profitability and their quality of life. And then what you're going to have are 3 economic drivers that tell you, am I moving in the direction of like that vision, that win? Because you have to measure it with something, and there are certainly lots of ways you could do that, but always at least have these 3 economic drivers. Because if you're in the business, one of your vision, part of your vision should be that you are making more than you are right now, right? And the way we do that, if we're growing and we're taking on new clients and we're working more effectively with the clients we have, there's really 3 things. So it's annual retainer fees, it's assets under management, the fees that we get from that, and then it's our commissions, or first year commissions, as it's commonly told. So in my vision, I'll just read you this, some version of this you should have, and it's all on this tool. It says we generate, and this is 3 year, we generate X amount in annual retainer fees, X amount in AUM fees, and X amount in FYC. Our X person team, so you have to have some size team, right? X person team of peak performers operates as a holistic fee-based financial planning company. We have X annual retainer clients that generate X in recurring financial planning fees. I have a project manager, paraplanner in all of my meetings. They do the meeting notes and they manage the client's projects to completion using the monthly strategy summaries with every client. We do location and expectation meetings with every new client, and all existing clients are on an annual cadence of mid-year and year-end strategy sessions. We average X new client referrals from existing clients per month. We have a service liaison that's excellent in driving new applications to completion and handling all of our service needs without me needing to be involved. We have X amount in liquid reserves. So that vision, and certainly you could add whatever you want to it, but this is something easy that you can look at every day. You can read it, and it's tangible. You can measure it as it relates to your business. And all you're going to do here is then take that same thing. And I would recommend these things be present. If you want to operate a holistic, fee-based financial planning practice, the clients are engaged, you're getting people introduced to you from those clients all the time, not because you asked, because they just love the value they're getting. That should be the life you're living 3 years from today. But then you back that down into a 1 year version of that. And it's the exact same words, just the numbers are smaller because you're 1 year in instead of three. And then you're going to do the same thing 90 days from now when you write out the 90-day vision. It's just the numbers are smaller because it's 90 days from now. But it all should be moving you in a trajectory to get to that big picture vision of that 3 year. And what I love about 90 days is it's a great like time frame that creates focus. So as everybody, we talked about this before, but Justin and I are in strategic coach. And one of the benefits of strategic coach, there are many, is that every 90 days, we drift, right? There is a lot going on and we're doing a bunch, having meetings. We probably accomplished a lot, but that 90, and there's always new ideas that are coming in. We're thinking, should we do that? Should we do that? And then what ends up happening is every 90 days, you go through a series of exercises, some like this that we're taking you through today, that really help you narrow the focus. Yeah, those are a lot of things, but of those, what would be the needle movers? And that's where you come up with your 90-day action plan. And the 90-day action plan is going to, again, we give you samples of things we think would be good for you to include. That if you're doing this work, you should have on there. But that's the tangible stuff that's not a part of your normal. So, our action plans always have a couple components. It's like nurture the normal. So what do we need to keep doing that we've already been doing? And then normalize new. What are new things that we're not doing that we need to make sure get done? And so we give you a laundry list of things that you could add to this. You customize it for yourself. But the starting point for me, before we get into anything else, because if you're starting, like we're going to talk about ideal calendar, we're going to talk about like how our team comes together around that. But if you don't start here, it's like any strategy will be fine because you have no destination you're trying to arrive at. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care what industry you're in. Everyone can relate to like the cycles of your weight and fitness levels and things like that.
Sure,
Nobody
sure.
puts on a 3 year vision for their health to have cycles of negative periods of your physical health, right? Like that's not an objective or goal,
Right.
but it happens. So why
I want
does
to weigh a lot more in fat.
yeah, exactly. That's my objective. Right? Like unless that is your objective, maybe you're doing it for a YouTube channel or for a science experiment.
That's right.
Uh, and most people that's not the case, but we all go through that. And I think it's worthwhile stepping back and saying, why is that happening? Because it's universal to every aspect of our lives. It's that having a vision for that part of our life and then circling back to it. And what am I doing right now that's either adding value and pushing me further into alignment with what I want to do or what I want to achieve, or is it taking away from it? But if you don't have that defined, like there's nothing to point back to. There's no North Star, no compass to navigate by.
Yeah. I think it's so critical. And while it sounds really simple, it's one of those things that we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed. Because for our listeners, I can promise you, all of them have heard some version of this before. But isn't it interesting that, we've all gone to classes, we've read books, we've listened to a podcast, and we thought, man, that is true. That is useful. And then a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, we hadn't applied any of it. And so, unless you actually take action on it, I mean, this is so critical to healthy growth and moving in a healthy direction. We say it all the time, but unapplied truth is like unapplied paint. It just doesn't do anybody any good. Um, After you have this, that's where you can begin to say, okay, then what do I do next? Like, how do I take advantage of this vision that I have and the strategic things I've said I need to do? That's where a calendar is wonderful. And a calendar, an ideal calendar, should really support the process that you've decided is going to lead you in the direction and your team in the direction of fulfilling your 90-day, eventually 1 year, and eventually 3 year vision. And so you put it on the calendar because, again, some people have done this exercise and they're like, yeah, that was cool. And then it went in a drawer, it stayed in a computer file, and they'd never put it on the calendar. They never orchestrated it. And I love the word orchestration because it reminds me of an orchestra. And if you've ever heard an orchestra warm up, it sounds like noise, right? You have the best musicians in the world, but before the curtain rises, it's just like all people playing different scales and notes, different keys, different paces and rhythms. And then the conductor stands up in front of that orchestra and he orchestrates what they're going to play, the speed they're going to play it, so that everybody's on the same sheet of music. So your calendar should be an expression of what it is you believe are the needle mover things organizationally, both from a weekly standpoint and from an annual standpoint. So I would like to talk a little bit about that, and because there are fundamentals, right? There are things that, while I'm giving you some very specific ways to approach these different calendar blocks that I think you should dive into, and we've done whole podcasts on these different strategies and tactics and narratives and the way we move our people through a financial planning process first year and then on an annual cycle of operations. But what I'd really like to spend the rest of our time talking about today is actually how do you then design an ideal calendar to support that and support you. So here's the way I do that is I'd say that everybody, if you're doing this work, or if you're a support person for this work, you do three things, right? You prepare for meetings, you have meetings, and then you manage projects that result from those meetings. And that's it. That's what we do in every way. So some healthy approaches to calendar and blocking things out are this. So how do you start every day? So I'm a firm believer that there are some fundamental guardrails you can put in place that are a ripple effect to how you run the rest of your day. Before you get into any specific client conversations or team meetings or any of that. And for me, here's how it looks is every morning I get up. Now I get up really early. So if you're not a early person, that's fine. But as long as these things are still occurring, and I go to the gym. And for me, what works best, I go to Orange Theory. It's a very synergistic for me because I also meet people there. Many have become clients, but it's also a really good workout. They tell you what to do, and it's at the same time every day. So you see a lot of the same folks every day. You develop great relationships, and then it's just kind of it works for us. That's what we've done, my wife and I, Jamie. Now, so because here's the thing, exercise just in general, it has a ripple effect on a lot of other things. It's a cornerstone habit of life. One is it keeps you physically healthy. And here's the deal. If you're the smartest person in the world, but you're not physically healthy, it's really tough to do your role well. Even if you're really smart because your body's broken or you feel bad or you have low energy. So even if you walk every day, even if you go to CrossFit or a gym of some kind, just something that's going to get the endorphins going, keep your body physically healthy. It's a great cornerstone beginning habit. And you know what you're doing when you're doing that is, believe it or not, because everybody's like, well, you said there's only three things, Wes. You either prepare for meetings, have meetings, or manage projects for meetings. Um, and now you're throwing in exercise. Well, exercise, you're preparing for meetings. You're preparing to be better equipped with higher energy, better health, and you'll be happier if you prepare your body with exercise. You're preparing for meetings. Second thing I'd say is once I'm done with that, I come home and I cook a little breakfast, and then I generally will jump into what I call preparing my mind. And so that's where I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna read good devotionals out there that are putting good things in my head. I'm gonna read my 3 year vision, my 1 year vision, my 90-day vision, and then my action plan to make sure. Because remember, we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed. So I'm going to make sure that that's in my mind because that to me is kind of like stepping on the scale. All of a sudden it informs my subconscious of, are we, is our day orchestrated to move us in this direction, or have we gone off course? So it just reminds us of what we're looking for, because your eye can only see and the ear can only hear what the brain is looking for. And so I want my brain looking for things that are going to help me get me towards that vision. So I want to stop there for just a second, Justin, and give you a chance to kind of speak to that.
Yeah, I like the structure of it. I think you have to have something that helps create balance. And I think the rocks that you put on your calendar first, the big ones, are things that are just critical for a way of life. Because you might be able to sprint on in anything for a short period of time, but you can't sprint forever. Like you
Right.
have to create a cadence to where what are the things that make life enjoyable and sustainable. And I'm the same way. Like exercise is a part of it. My spiritual health is a part of it. I block time out specifically on my calendar for time with my wife versus my kids because I know I need those components in my life. And then I can start to frame in the other pieces of the work that we do within the time that's remaining. But I know that to sustain any type of lifestyle, those other components have to be there. So it's not just one side of the business, like your ability to perform it, because I can do anything again for a short period of time, but I really need something that I'm excited about, like going to the gym at 5 a.m. How excited are you every morning?
I
Wake
I am not.
up, right? Like you, but you, something reminds you of why you're doing it in the first place. This is
Right.
getting me where I want to go. So because even something that you like, and we've talked about this before, like I like meeting with clients, but if you give me a week of 26 meetings, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be stoked. Right? Like it doesn't matter if you like it. There's a volume level there as
Correct.
well.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. It can take something you're great at, that's one of the highest and best uses of your time, for your organization. But if it's too much, if there's too many things on there, all of a sudden you do get diminishing returns in both joy and profitability and other areas of your life. You're going to pay the price, and so it's kind of like this trade off. And again, most people listening to this, you're a high performer. Otherwise, you're not even listening to this. It's like you're not on the couch going, "Well, I don't have anything else to do, so I'm going to listen to the From Busy to Rich podcast." You like doing stuff, and you think, "Hey, this will help me maybe give me insights to even accomplish more." I will tell you that even really high producers and people who are really focused, sometimes one of the areas we sacrifice is those two components I just talked about: preparing your body and preparing your mind. And we for while we wouldn't do that in a lot of other areas of life, in this one area, we will trade what we want immediately for what we could have ultimately. I mean, we will trade what we want ultimately for what we could have immediately. Because what I want immediately when my alarm goes off at 4:15 is more sleep. What I want ultimately is to have had a good workout and plenty of time to prepare my mind without feeling rushed and be ready for the day at my highest and best energy level.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I am really good at sales at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh,
can
yeah.
dictate any reason in the world of why I should just
That's
stay.
right.
It's better for your health. You need more
That's
rest.
right. You need so much sleep. This is actually good for me. And yeah, there's so many things we can do. And at the end of it, you just gotta put that same, because some of you are masterful at this in some areas and not in this one. Just redirect the energy a little bit. Point it towards this matters as much as you doing the work for the client meeting, as you having the client meeting, because it's going to give you better outcomes in client meetings. So I think there's that. That's kind of the start. I would also say, there's an end to the day that's important, and then I'll talk about what goes in between. The end to the day is always going to be, kind of that resetting, because as you know, if you go through a whole day, even if your week was perfectly planned, you're going to have new information by the time you get to the end of that day than you did at the beginning. And it's one of those areas that if you don't stop and kind of reset the table, you're not going to get the same outcomes and results. So what we do by the time we get to the end of the day, you've got people that have moved meetings, new meetings that have scheduled, some meetings that have canceled. You have new requests coming to you that are like, hey, I should go ahead and deal with that. So organizing around that is critically important to say, how do I reset my day? That way you don't go into the next day with a mess. It's kind of like if you've ever been really tired, like my wife Jamie hates like a messy kitchen, and it doesn't matter how tired she is. Like what she wants is it to be clean, no matter who's been over there. So it's like clean it up that because she didn't come into a mess the next day. And we need to do that with our calendars. Like, don't come into a mess the next day. To as much as that it depends on you. There's always going to be more work you can get done. Always more stuff you could get to without cleaning up the messes. But clean up the messes. Um, I think from a from a bookend standpoint, those are two wonderful ways to structure your daily calendar. There's a lot more we want to talk about in this, Justin, but I want to make sure that we give it ample time. So we're going to do that on next week's podcast when we continue on in this topic for kind of the ideal calendar and how you start at the top and you eventually get down to this. What are the other critical components to running a healthy organization that's playing beautiful music?